All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Henderson, and I'm from AIS. And today I'm going to talk to you about CVS. And as Carl talked about earlier, CVS is now kind of considered a legacy source control system. So I'm going to use the phrase granddaddy of source control systems. And we'll kind of talk about some of the semantics and what goes on when you use CVS. So, just to go over the history, CVS development started really late 1986, 1985, early 1986. Originally, CVS was written as a series of shell scripts that were just launched through command line. It was based on Revision Control System, RCS. RCS manages individual files, not whole projects. CVS was really kind of the first project that came along that managed the first source control that came along that managed a project. CVS implemented branching and was officially released in 1990 under the GPL. It's currently still under active development. I think there's a major release, I'd say once a year or so, once every 2 years. And CVS NT is actually a Microsoft port of CVS. And that has actually been the most vibrant part of the CVS community. CVS NT has had a lot of features that were developed there, ported over to the actual CVS product. So, right now, oops. Oh, wow. Evidently. CVS is currently in use at AIS. We chose it. Oh, don't tell me. I'll find out later. CVS was well established in the IT community when AIS chose it, and it was over 5 years ago that we chose it. Because of our size, we're really a medium-sized shop. We wanted a server to back up our code, and distributed source control systems weren't really mature at that point. We wanted a dedicated server. We wanted something that would integrate with Active Directory, and that we are actually using CVS NT at AIS. It also integrates with other tools. For instance, we use Hudson CI for continuous integration. And from a developer standpoint, CVS is relatively easy to learn and understand. It follows your traditional source control concepts. So, I'll talk a little bit here about hosting for CVS. CVS is a client server. It runs under a client server architecture. We can have servers under Windows or Linux or Unix. As a developer, you make your connections using SSH. And if you actually want to consider CVS, for whatever reason, there are third-party CVS hosting services available if you don't want to run your own server. It just takes a little bit of looking. So, features. The advantages over RCS, you can group your files into projects. There was no exclusive locking. Up until then, RCS had exclusive locks on files if one person was editing. So for instance, James and I, under RCS, would not be able to edit the same file, but under CVS we can. You also have remote operation. So developers, as Carl said, are not tied to the LAN if they're using CVS. And you can view the state of a file. You can tell whether it's been modified, if it's checked in, and that kind of thing. And then, as I said before, it supports branching, so you can have feature sets in your code. There's a number of ways you can use CVS. You can use command line. Not a lot of people actually do that, as opposed to get Mercurial. What people actually use are a program called like Tortoise CVS, or you actually use from within your IDE. So Eclipse, NetBeans, IntelliJ, Visual Studio, Emacs, they all have support for CVS. And then CVS itself has kind of another product you can add on called ViewVC, which will actually give you like a web-based view of your repositories. And I'll give you an example of that. So I just want to run through a few terms and vocabulary that we use with CVS, and these are pretty standard for source control systems. We have the concept of adding, so where you put a new file into the source control. Commit, where you check your changes in or you save your changes to the repository. We have update, so where you pull in changes from the repository to your local machine. CVS has specifically an update special feature where you can get a specific file in a branch, or what they call tags, a tagged file. And tags are a CVS feature where you can mark a specific file as a certain revision. So for us, for instance, we mark our production releases like something like prod release and then a date. So you can go back and see what code you released on a certain production date. And like I said before, CVS has branches. The image there is actually an example of CVS branches where you have revision 1.1 and 1.2 is your main line, your trunk, and 1.3 and 1.4. And then you go branch and you can have 1.1.2, and then you make some changes, 1.2.1, and then you can see at revision 1.3 you've merged back to the main line, the trunk. One of the limitations of CVS is that this is all file-based. You don't have a specific, you can't mark a version of a directory as it was at a certain point in time. And so let's get into some examples to kind of show you CVS. What we're going to do for each of these source control systems is show you a similar example using the actual source control system. So for this, we'll do CVS. We'll have one for Subversion and Git and Mercurial. So I'll kind of walk through. We're going to use the same scenario, so hopefully it's familiar enough to everybody. What we have is an HTML file. We're going to have two people working on the file, and one person will make changes and the other person will either get the changes or compare or do that kind of thing. So for this example, what we're going to do, James is going to be helping me, and one of us is going to fix a typo. Meanwhile, the other person is making a change to the same file, and we're both going to try to commit, and we'll have a conflict. So just to give you an example of our file, it's a very simple HTML file. So we're not trying to do anything too complicated. And let's see here. Oh. So, let me see here. I just got to get to my file system. There we go. So, hello world. James is going to make a revision first.
And are you ready for your commit?
Yep. Go ahead and commit. So what James did is, Hello World has a typo in it. He's going to go fix the typo. Meanwhile, I'm going to make a change in another part of the file. Hopefully.
I've committed.
Okay. Oops. Let's edit this with TextPad. And I'm going to add a paragraph tag. See here? Okay. And let me save this. And then now what I'm going to try to do is check this in. Is there a left menu click
You
button?
control click.
Control click.
Another try a 2-finger tap.
There we go. So now I can go down, and what I'm using here is Tortoise. And what Tortoise does is it prompts me to enter a comment. So I'm going to say, made change. And let me move this up. And down. Let's see. I scroll down.
Can you just make the window smaller? Just drag it down from the top.
There we go. Now I'm going to click OK. And CVS is going to try to check it in. And it broke. So CVS gave me an error and said the operation failed. What I have to do is try to merge James' changes with mine. So let's try to close this window. And so what you have to do with CVS is actually do what's called an update. And then what this will tell me is that I have an error, hopefully. There we go. So let me do a CVS update. And it's going to want me to do a merge. So if I right click again, and I can choose merge conflicts. and it's going to put those two together. And what the program I'm using right here is WinMerge, and this actually just gives you a visual view of the two changes that were made. So let me move these over. There we go. So you can see where James' changes are on the right side for me, and then my changes on the left side, and I can use the program to actually go through and resolve the changes and then go and check in CVS. So let's just say I did that. And it's going to ask me to merge, which ones I want to keep, and then I can go and check in to my heart's delight. So, let's see if we can get back to the presentation. I'm just going to open with Firefox. All right. So then, let's scroll down. And so we went through the basic example, and we saw the result. I couldn't commit until I took some sort of action. And then I was able to use WinMerge to go through and resolve the change. And so we saw the error message. The thing with CVS is that it doesn't let you commit files that are out of date. You can use the update command in order to try to merge and go through that way. And similar example to this with CVS, it handles pretty much all conflicts the same way. So I'm not going to go through that right now. But if in some source control systems, if people make changes to different parts of the file and try to merge, some can handle that, some can't. CVS just can't handle that. So if we change the same part of the file, we'd have the same issue. The easiest way to perform merges is really to use your IDE. So then you use WinMerge to resolve your changes again. And then, as we mentioned before, CVS does not handle renames very well. So it depends on what product or what software you're using as to how it handles them. If you're using Tortoise, Tortoise has a feature that actually is experimental and will try to rename. So let me see if I can just rename this and go from and show you that. So if I go into the file, oops, and I choose the CVS menu. Let me move this up. And choose CVS menu for Tortoise. Ah, well, um, what, I'll just kind of explain what it does. CVS will try to, what Tortoise will do is it tries to rename, it puts the file in an inconsistent state, and then it is different than what your IDE would do. Within CVS, your IDE will actually do a delete. Like for Eclipse, it'll do a delete and then an actual rename. And Tortoise will just try to rename it, and then what VuVC will do is it will try to VuVC will not be the same as what your IDE is, or VuVC will not have the updated rename. So let me just show you. And and let's get back to the presentation. So, go down here. So, I have an example here. So, if you rename it, what VuVC does is it shows hello world, and it adds this directory history file. So, in summary, with CVS, if you're going to use Tortoise, the best thing to do is to delete and rename. And not all implementations handle that in the same manner with CVS. So, one of the things with CVS is that it's easy to learn if you're a developer. It integrates with other systems. There's a lot of online resources because it is so mature, and it's extremely stable. It's really a workhorse. The caveats with CVS are that shops have migrated to more modern source control systems. Modern and other source control systems have improved on CVS's weaknesses. And there's a fair amount of overhead and know-how involved if you're going to administer CVS. And we just have some resources. So, any questions? Thank you.